People quit backpacking for many different reasons, and in today's video I'm going to talk about a handful of reasons why I've personally seen people quit backpacking after their first couple of backpacking trips, some of them even after their very first backpacking trip. I'm not shooting this video to try and shame anybody. I'm really hoping that we can start some discussion here. So if I've not listed any reasons why you've seen people quit backpacking, maybe let me know in the comment section down below. I think that these videos really help people out, especially newer backpackers, because while we do talk about reasons that people quit backpacking and maybe some mistakes that newer backpackers make, there's also a lot of really good information on how to mitigate these risks, and I think those help people out a lot in the long run going forward. Now, if you guys are new to the channel, my name is Matt. Welcome to Matty Outdoors. All we talk about here is hiking and backpacking, and a big thing on my channel is trying to help people get out into the backcountry and experience the backcountry in a safe, comfortable way. So be that, lightening up your backpacking gear loadout or doing tips and tricks like we're going to talk about in today's video. That's what the channel is all about. So if you guys are interested in that kind of content, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. And with that out of the way, let's talk about reason number one. Now, these are not in any particular order. This is just the order that they came into my head as I was jotting down reasons why I've seen people quit backpacking. And the very first one we're going to talk about has to do with footwear. And we're not going to get into a boots versus trail runners discussion, but in this particular instance, the friend that I was backpacking with on his very first backpacking trip was wearing hiking boots, pretty similar to these boots here. I'm pretty sure they were actually even Solomon's. Now, as I mentioned, this was my friend's very first backpacking trip. He had got some backpacking gear handed down to him from a friend who was, previously into the hobby and just kind of passing down some used gear. And one of the pieces of gear that he needed to pick up was a pair of hiking boots. Now, the big mistake that he made when he went to pick out a pair of hiking boots was going to the clearance section right away as soon as he walked into the store. And he found a really nice high quality pair of boots. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they were Salomon Quest boots. But the big problem that he had was in the clearance section, the boots on sale, he didn't find any that were actually in his size. So he ended up picking up a pair of boots that were actually a size and a half too big for his feet. We were taking a lot of breaks. I was taking things nice and slow. But it wasn't until we got to camp when he took his boots off and he put his sandals on that I really noticed in how bad a shape his feet actually were. Now, this is when I found out that the boots he had bought were a size and a half too big, and he was actually wearing 3 pairs of socks. And he said his feet were still swimming inside the boots, even with the boots tightened up as much as he could possibly get them. And his feet were in rough shape. There was a ton of blisters all along each side of his feet, the bottom of his feet, the top of his feet. He had blisters between his toes. He was not having a good time. So the next morning when we got set up and ready to go, we taped up his feet really well with Luco tape and just took our time, and we did get off trail without incident. But the big learning experience in this is, when you go and pick up a pair of hiking boots or trail runners, just making sure that, you might have to spend a little bit more and you may not be able to get the ones out of the discount rack, but making sure you get footwear that's going to fit your feet. You're walking all day. You want your feet to be comfortable. You need the footwear that are on your feet to be fitting your foot so your feet aren't sliding around inside. You're not getting hot spots. You're not getting foot fatigue. So like I said, the big learning experience from this one is when it comes to footwear, we're not just price shopping. We're making sure we get footwear that fits our feet properly. Now, the second instance that we're going to talk about was not my friend's first backpacking trip. I'm pretty sure this is about their 3rd or 4th backpacking trip. But this one has to do with poor weather and weather changes. This may vary from, location to location. Up here in the Canadian Rockies, when you're in the mountains, you can get weather changes almost hourly. There's been so many times where I've planned a backpacking trip and you look at the weather window before you leave for the trip, and it is supposed to be sunny skies, 24 Celsius the entire time, and it is cold, rainy, and miserable, and you are sucked in the entire time. Just weather is very, very unpredictable. And when it came to planning out this trip, like many times, the weather window said it looked really good. It was really promising. And we got hit with a massive storm in the middle of the day. We were hiking through a valley. There was not a whole lot of tree cover. And you were just kind of at the point where, okay, well, we just got to walk through it. And we spent 3 hours walking through the rain. We were completely soaked. For me, it's not really a big deal, but for this individual, that was just kind of their breaking point. I don't really know what kind of advice to give on this. I guess just some people are going to have a different breaking point when it comes to weather and being wet and cold. than others, and some people have a harder time accepting that. But I think just knowing going into it that that kind of weather can and does happen, you know, just making sure that you're mentally prepared as well as having the right gear to get through that situation can definitely help make it a lot more enjoyable. I guess enjoyable is not the right word, but can definitely make it a lot more manageable when you're out there. Now, this next one happened on a friend's very first backpacking trip, and you know, they had accumulated a lot of their gear. I had lent them some gear, and they had this really cool tent that they wanted to try out that was handed down to them. I think it might have been from their brother. I'm not 100% sure. This happened a number of years ago. But the tent in question was not a backpacking tent. Now, I'm not trying to say that you need a, you know, really expensive backpacking tent to get out backpacking. I've personally gone out backpacking with a $50 tent from Walmart before and did just fine. But this tent in particular was 8.5 pounds. It was a 4-season tent, and you know, this was backpacking in the middle of summer. So the rain fly came down and sealed right to the ground, and it wouldn't have been an issue, but overnight my friend decided to completely seal off the vestibule and zipped it up all the way, and you know, tuck the little flaps on, like on a 4-season tent at the bottom of your fly will go to the ground, and a lot of times they have these little flaps, and you tuck the flaps out and pack snow on them, and that stops the wind from whipping through. So what my friend did is they tucked the flaps underneath the tent to kind of seal everything in, and they had a condensation nightmare inside their tent. Like, he said he woke up at about 3 in the morning absolutely soaked. He said it seemed like it was raining inside his tent. We do get really high humidity up here in the Rockies, so you know, condensation management is a big thing, and making sure that your tent is set up to ventilate properly. You know, myself personally, I almost never close my tent doors completely unless it's like a torrential downpour. But any chance I have to, you know, even crack the door on my tent halfway, you know, like on my MSR Hubba Hubba where you've got, you know, the doors on either side, I love opening those up halfway and kind of rolling them back so you get nice airflow through. And just making sure that, you know, you've got any of your guy out points on your tent that can really open things up and help promote airflow. It's just going to really help cut down on the condensation. You get the temperature difference between the air inside your shelter and the cooler air outside. It's going to cause condensation to form on the inner walls of your tent. I didn't see this happening overnight, but when I got up in the morning, I did watch him wring out his sleeping bag. I don't know if you guys have ever seen someone wring out a sleeping bag. It's a pretty crappy, terrible situation. And luckily it was only a one-night trip, and we had a very short hike out the next morning. So I guess the learning experience from this one is making sure when we set up our shelter, we are setting it up in a way that is going to help promote airflow through the tent or hammock or tarp or whatever you're sleeping under to help cut down and minimize the amount of condensation we're getting inside. Now, the fourth one that we're going to talk about today, again, has to do with gear and improper gear. I know it kind of seems to be the theme of this video. The issue with this one was, again, a friend's very first backpacking trip. You know, they knew I was into backpacking. They reached out to me like, hey, Matt, I'd love to go on a backpacking trip. Do you think I could tag along with you one of these times? I said, yeah, absolutely. You know, if you've got, you know, gear set up, you know, if you don't have gear, I can hook you up with some gear. They said, no, I've got all the gear I need. I've been collecting it over the last year. I actually watched some of your YouTube videos and I saw some gear loadout ideas and I picked up the gear. And, you know, when we met up at the trailhead, I was actually pretty impressed. You know, they had some pretty high-end gear. A lot of the gear they had was actually nicer than the gear that I have. So we started hiking along and everything seemed to be going great. You know, we stopped for a lunch break, and they said they were experiencing a lot of discomfort in their shoulders. So I said, okay, you know, let's take lunch and we'll take, you know, maybe an hour break. After lunch, we'll take a look at your pack, see if we can make some adjustments to it and, you know, get it fitting a little bit more comfortably so that weight's more on your hips and not on your shoulders. We had our lunch. Lunch was great. Started fitting up their pack after lunch and found out that their pack was 2 sizes too small for them. Much like my buddy with his boots, you know, this friend had went to the clearance section, saw a backpack that they thought was really awesome, but it was only available in the size small. They thought, what's the big deal? Bought a size small pack, and their torso length actually is going to require a size large. So they were 2 sizes too small on their backpack, and all of the weight of their gear was on their shoulders. There was nothing that I could do to adjust his pack to make it fit better. It was just kind of one of those things that it was just the wrong piece of gear for his body type. I'm assuming his pack was probably pretty close to like 35, 40 pounds, which if you're not used to carrying that kind of weight, especially on your shoulders the entire time, that can really wear on you and become really uncomfortable. And, you know, what was a 3-day planned backpacking trip turned into just a single night trip as we ended up hiking out the next morning. And I took as much of the weight from his pack as I could to kind of lessen the amount of, you know, shoulder fatigue he was going to be dealing with. It was just one of those things, you know, a bad experience out on trail. and my friend has never stepped foot on trail on a backpacking trip again. He just said, you know, it's not for him. He didn't think that it was worthwhile, and he thought it was crappy and just had a really bad experience. But like has kind of been the theme of this video, you know, making sure we get the right gear that's going to fit our body properly, our hiking style properly. I'm very, very confident that a properly fitting backpack would have been far more comfortable for him. We would have got through the entire trip, and I probably would have had another person added to my hiking fam, and you know, another person that I would hike with quite regularly. Like I said at the start of this video, if there's any reasons why you guys and gals have seen people quit backpacking after a handful of trips that I haven't talked about in this video, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm always looking for ideas for, you know, future videos, and I love getting ideas from you guys for future videos. So like I said, drop those down below for me. That really helps out the channel, and it helps out anybody who sees these videos going forward in the future. And like I said, this video was not to try and shame anybody. You know, at the end of the day, backpacking honestly just isn't for everybody. You know, some people are going to try and get into it, and you know, just for various different reasons, you know, things are not going to work out. And there's a reason why not every single person out there loves backpacking, loves getting out there and kind of roughing it in the woods and being a little bit minimalistic from time to time, you know. But if you are someone who's looking at getting into backpacking and, you know, looking for some backpacking hiking tips and tricks to keep yourself out there on trail and keep yourself comfortable, I've got an entire playlist on hiking and backpacking tips. I'll fire that right here for you. So when you're done with this video, find a video in that playlist, check it out. As always, I'm Matty. Thank you so dang much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.